You know, if you clicked on this video, you already know what we're going to be drawing. And I don't need to tell you this, but what I need to tell you is that you actually can draw this girl, even if you think that you can't. So let's begin our preparational parts. Firstly, we will need to decide onto the canvas. We are using a standard square canvas today with pixel width and pixel height set at 2048 pixels. DPI are at 300, color profile set as sRGB with this low number. When it's all done, hitting done, go into our canvas and to continue with our preparational parts. Firstly, please go under the description and download all the materials mentioned for this tutorial. And when you did it, let's go and decide onto the brush. So we will start with a little bit of a boring part, but we need this part because we want everyone to succeed, right? So let's go to our brush library. We'll go to the sketching folder if you want to. You can select any brush from the sketching folder because we're starting from the sketch part. But if you want to follow along, you can go and download this dial flat pencil. So you will use the same brush that I'm going to be using through this tutorial. And when you pick the brush, let's continue by going to our layers. We'll go to the background color. We'll go to the cards, this color palette that you downloaded, and we will select the color with the title background. Now, when we did it, let's go to our color palettes one more time, to actual color palettes, going again to our cards, and we will start by selecting the color with the title pink red. Now, when the preparations are done, they are actually not done. We need to do one more thing. We will need to go firstly to our range icon. We will go under canvas and we will toggle drawing guides. And again, we see these cells, but to make sure that everyone is starting from the same point, let's go to edit drawing guides. And here, where we have the grid size, we will set it to 65 pixels. When we did it, let's hit done and let's start with our guiding lines. So we firstly will go over the top, we will count to 2 and we will create a straight line right here, going through the whole canvas. Holding our Apple Pencil, holding one of our fingers on the screen to make it straight and doing the same onto the bottom. So 2 cells, straight line, holding Apple Pencil, holding our finger. Now, when we are done with it, we will need to find out where we are going to be positioning some facial features and all the features that we have for this girl. So let's go firstly over the top and we will count to 6. So the same thing here, we will need to count to 6. So 2, 4, 6, and we are creating a straight line right here. So again, holding it, creating something like that. And when we have this line, go into the bottom, counting to 10. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and again, creating a straight line right here. When we are done with it, we have the preparational guiding lines for all the features, but we will need to position a couple of more guiding lines to figure out how we want to position the face and everything. So we don't want to create a boring illustration. We want to create some kind of a tilt in the head. So we will need to create a guiding line that will go on the diagonal axis. So let's go over the top and we will count to 12 right here. So 2, 4, 6, what's after 6, 8, 10, 12. When we have 12 straight away right here, we will count to 16. So 14, 16, and this 16 mark, we will move down and we will connect these 12 and 16 marks right here from top to the bottom. So when we have the result like that, we are done with the guiding line for the face. So let's go to this small size area right here onto the bottom and we will position some guiding lines for the body. So what we need to do right here is to go to this intersection right here onto the second line. And from this intersection, we will go firstly to the left. We will count to 2 right here. And we will do the same onto the opposite side, but this time we will count to 5. So let's go 2, 4, 5, and we will make a little mark down like that. Now, when we have these 2 little dots, let's go to the last line that we have right here, and we will count to 7 from both sides. So again, going 2, 4, 6, 7, straight away connecting these 2 elements like that, and doing the same onto the opposite side too. So 2, 4, 6, 7. Now, creating a straight line like that, that will be diagonal, holding it to make it actually straight. And when we have the result like that, we are done with the guiding lines for now, but we will need to figure out how we will position the face and we will need to deal with facial features. So let's go to our layers firstly. We'll create one more layer on top by tapping on the plus icon. And to not be distracted and to know what we are doing, let's go and switch the color to something different. So for example, let's go with this red color. So now when we have everything set in that way, let's go to this big area right here in the middle and we will create a shape of the circle. So create it with one line, doesn't matter how it looks. We will hold our Apple Pencil at the end of the line. will use this QuickShape tool to make the shape better. And we also will hold one of our fingers on the screen to make sure that the shape is an actual circle. So when we have the result like that, let's lift up everything and let's go and adjust the shape so we will make it size-wise similar for one. So we will need to deal with size, okay? We will go to the arrow key on the top left. We will go to one of the nodes that is blue. We will tap on it and we will write down 885. Now, when we did it, let's hit our screen and let's go and reposition the shape. So we will need to position it the way that we almost don't have any space on the top, so it's touching the line that we have right here, or almost touching it, and we have some space on the bottom. And also we'll need to position it the way that the part that we have onto the circle is a little bit bigger on the right than on the left, so like that. When we have it, we will tap onto our arrow key to deselect everything, and let's go again to our layers. We will create one more layer on top, and we will go and create a straight line that will go somewhere through the center of our circle. So again, hold your Apple Pencil, hold one of your fingers. When you have this line, we will go and make it a little bit more interesting. So again, go into our arrow key on the top left. We are tapping onto the green node right now, and we will write down 8. So now when we have this line, we will go and position it at the center. So move it, try to position it at the center. When you have it in that way, let's tap onto our arrow key to deselect everything. And now when we have this line, we will need to make copies of this line to kind of make sure that we have equal parts onto the bottom. So we will go to our layers. We will go to this line where we have like this line, we will swipe it from right to left and we will choose the option duplicate. Now, when we have the copy, go in again to our arrow key using uniform method, and we will need to drag this line down. So we are eyeballing it. So we will have equal parts right here. We'll need 3 equal parts. So position this line like that, and then straight away, let's go back to our layers, swipe this layer from right to left and choose again duplicate. Go in again to our arrow key, moving this shape down. So we will have the equal parts right here. That's our main goal. When we have it, one more time, go into our layers, swiping the layer with a line from right to left, choosing duplicate. And the last one, go into our arrow key, moving this line down and connecting it with the line that we have on the horizontal axis. So now when we have the result like that, let's tap onto our arrow key and let's actually go to our layers, and we will merge all these layers together that belong to the face. So putting one of our fingers on the layer on the top and the second finger onto the layer with our circle and making a pinch movement like that. Now, to not be confused, let's go and name these lines. So on the top, we will have the fringe. So let's go and write it down. When we have the fringe, we will go underneath and we will write down eyes. So eyes are done. Underneath the eyes, we will have mouth. Underneath the mouth, we will have chin. So everything similar to what we have on our face. So when we have the result like that, we are done with our guiding lines, but let's do one more thing. We will go to our range icon one more time and we will toggle drawing guide because we don't need our drawing guides anymore. And when we are done with it, we are done with our guiding lines. So let's move on to our sketching part. So let's begin the sketching firstly by going to our layers. We will go to one of the layers first. We will tap onto the N icon and we will go to the opacity slider. Let's drag it slightly toward the left so we will have a slightly less visible result right here. And we will do the same with the second layer too. So tapping onto the N icon and adjusting the opacity. When it's done, let's create one more layer on top of all the layers that we have. And then we will go to our color palettes and we will select some color that will be contrast and seen on our screen. So for you, I suggest to go with this light cyan color, but for me, I will go and select short shadow because it will be more clearly seen onto the camera. So when we picked the color, we will use the same brush and we will start by going to this line that we have right here onto the bottom, and we will start by creating a chin. So let's go firstly to this last line that we've created, and we will be going up with a line like that. So very easily, if you need to create a couple of lines, it's okay. Going like that and figuring out what we are doing right here. So creating a line, going like that, trying to make it kind of similar to the overall line that we have right here onto the bottom of the circle, kind of parallel to it. And when we have this first line, let's go and create the ear. So for the ear, we will go between the lines of eyes and mouth, and we will glue this ear to this actual shape of our circle. So let's go with a shape like that. You can go with the bigger size of the ear or with the smaller size of the ear. You can create half of the circle, half of the ellipse, It's up to you. So create a shape that you will prefer to see right here. And then when you have it, let's go right here to the bottom and we will connect our shape with the ear. So we will create more like a curvy part right here. And when we have it, we will grab our eraser. We will adjust the size if we need to, and we will go and clean up everything. So we will have a nice look right here for our lines. Now, when we have the result like that, let's go to the opposite side. We will go again to this line, to this intersection between the eyes and our circular shape. And we will go down from this line and we will start to create a shape of the cheek. So we will go with a very, very soft curve like that. Again, if you need to try it out a couple of times, go and try it out a couple of times, connect it nicely with the shape that you have for the chin. And again, right now we are creating a sketch, so it doesn't need to be perfect. We are figuring out and we are mapping out everything that later on will be our illustration. So rotate your canvas, zoom in, zoom out, see whether you like the result, whether you see that maybe you need to go and adjust the line right here onto the right part, maybe make it slightly rounder or bigger or anything. Create a nice shape that you would like to see right here. If you have some elements that you need to erase, go and you know what you need to do, grab your eraser and adjust the parts that you don't need. So now when we have the result like that, let's get back to our brush. Let's go and elongate this line right here onto this side. And when we have it, we will go and construct the second ear onto the opposite side. So again, we are going to the same area, but as we have a little bit of a tilt in the head, this ear will be kind of hidden. So we will need to create slightly different shape. So let's go and create it in a smaller way, but trying to remain the same shape that we had onto the opposite side, but a little bit hidden. So when we have the result like that, again, create it between these lines. And when you have the shape, let's go and create the inner part of the ears to finish up with the ears. So let's firstly go toward this right part and we will go and create a peculiar shape right here. So basically we will need to create the letter H right here, but it will have a little hook on the top. So when we have it, you can go with, again, bigger shape, smaller shape, maybe rotate it slightly if you want to. When we have it on one ear, let's go to the opposite side. And here, as we have this ear hidden, we will go and create only the top part of our H letter. So now when we have the result like that, we are done with our bottom part of the face for now, and we will go and continue by creating the facial features. So firstly, let's go to the mouth line and we will start with creating the mouth. So let's go and create something very simple, maybe with one line like that. You can hold it at the end, and when you have this line created, let's go lift up our Apple Pencil and we will go over the editing mode right here. We will go and we will see that we have some notes right here. We can go and adjust them. So adjust the shape to your liking, make it more rounded, make it slightly less rounded. It's up to you. Create a shape, tap onto the screen when you are ready. If you need to adjust it even more, maybe make it more visible, you are welcome to go along this line and adjust it. So when you have this shape, we have the mouth, we will need to go over the top and we will need to figure out what we have for the eyes. So for the eyes, firstly, we have these ends of the mouth, we have the ends for the mouth, so the corners right here, and we'll go from them to this line where we have the eyes, so on both sides, and we will create the markdowns like that. Now, when we have these markdowns, we will go to the opposite side, so near the ears, and we will create the second markdowns right here. So create them like that, go closer to the ears or far away from them, it's up to you. When we have these markdowns, let's go and create the actual shapes for the eyes. So we will go and start by creating a very rounded shape like that. So let's go with a very pleasant look right here with a very smiley face. We will create half of the circle. We will try to add some thickness to it. And you can see I'm not going to the end of this little markdown because here we have a little wing. So we will go from this shape that we've created slightly up and we will create the shape like that. So very triangular, very soft, something very, very cute right here. And again, we will go right here inside this shape that we've created and we will shade it. So we will see clearly what we are doing. And again, you can zoom out your canvas. You can go and see what you are doing from the not like the bird's view, but from the far away, and see whether you need to adjust something with your eraser or with your brush, or maybe you don't like how these markdowns look, so you can go and get rid of them. So find what looks good for you, and if you feel that maybe you can go and make it slightly more rounded to create a more smiley face, it's again up to you. You can go and create these shapes in a way that you prefer. So when we have the result like that, I will probably go and move this shape slightly down, and we can do it very easily by going to the S ribbon icon. We will use freehand method, and we will go select this shape like that. When it is selected, we will go to the arrow key. We will use uniform method, and we will drag this shape slightly down, so it will be positioned onto the line. So when we have the result like that, let's go and tap onto the first icon that we used. It was our S ribbon icon, and then we will go to the opposite side, and we will create the similar shape right here, but slightly like smaller way, in a smaller way. So we will go right here, and again we will start by creating a shape of half of the circle like that, and we can start to do it the same way as we right now have it onto our different sides, opposite side. So we will go right here straight on the line, and we will create the line right here. So it's not the same way as we've created before onto the line, so we are not going to be moving this shape. So now we will create it in a slightly smaller way, and then we will go again to the opposite side, and we will create this little wing right here. So let's create the same thing as we have it onto the opposite side. So trying to create a nice rounded shape, going for our eraser and erasing the parts that we don't need, maybe trying to create the clean look for these elements, or if you don't like the clean look, you are welcome to keep everything as messy as you prefer. When you have the eye right here, again, you don't need to be precise with your shapes, you don't need to be similar right now on both sides. Later on we can fix everything if it kind of looks a little bit off. So for now we are figuring out what we have onto our face. When we have the result like that, let's go and create a little nose, and for the nose we will go with a simple dot. So go into this line that we have in the center, going closer to the shapes for the eyes and creating a dot like that. So when we have it, let's finish up with our facial features by creating the cheeks. So for the cheeks we will go underneath the eye, and we will create the shape with one line like that, holding it at the end. And again, if you need to adjust it, go into our editing mode and adjusting it from here. So probably let's shrink it down a little bit, and we will go and position it maybe slightly differently by holding our Apple Pencil and dragging the shape to the side. So find the placement for your cheek, and when you are done, tap on the screen, and let's do the same onto the opposite side. So here we will need only the part of it, so you can go and create only the part. Go to the editing mode and adjust it to make it similar to the previous shape onto the opposite side. So now when we have the second cheek, let's also go and work onto the eyebrows to completely finish up with our facial features. And for the eyebrows, let's go right here closer to the line that we have for the fringe. So we are starting from the right part, and we will go with the shape like that. So you can go with different size, with different position for this element. When you found the placement for this cheek, let's go to the opposite side, and maybe right here we will go slightly. So where were we? We will need to create the second eyebrow. So let's go to the opposite side, and we will create it right here, slightly higher than the opposite side. So when we have the result like that, we are done with our face for now, and let's go and work a little bit onto our hair. So for the hair, firstly, let's go to this top part, and we will create a couple of lines that will show us the direction of our hair. So let's go like that. We are not going too far from this line that we have for our fringe line. We are creating a couple of soft curves right here, and when we have 3 of them onto the right part, let's go to the left side, and we will create slightly different shape right here. So we will go closer to this line right here, and we will create a very soft little curve like that. So again, for now, we are mapping out everything, and when we have these guiding lines, let's also go right here and finish up this line right here. So going higher, and we are creating a very, very soft curve like that. So now when we have these all guiding lines that we have right now, let's go and turn them into an actual fringe. So going like that, trying to recreate the lines that we have right here. And we are going with little shapes like that. So going like that, starting to create little cornery parts right here and going up and creating different shapes. So trying to make everything very flowy, trying to create some rhythm with our shapes right here. So rhythm means that we are not creating them on one line, creating the gaps and connection parts onto one line. We are going higher, we are going a little bit lower. We are creating some kind of movement into our hair. So let's go and continue creating these little strands of hair going toward the opposite side right here. You also can go and think a little bit about the weight that we can add to these fringe elements. So the weight will mean that we will have a bit of the volume, the more volume onto the bottom. So our shapes will be a little bit more rounded. So again, take a look at your shapes from the distance. If you want to go with your eraser and erase some parts, go and do that. So when you have the result that you like, let's go to the opposite side and create some additional elements right here. So firstly, let's go to this part right here and we will go slightly to the left and we will create a little line that will finish up the overall shape of our fringe. Now, when we have it, we can go and start creating the actual shape of the hair. So we will need to go right here onto the top to this line where we have this like guiding line, the diagonal guiding line. We will go slightly lower and we will create a little dent like that. And then we'll go a little bit higher than this first dent that we've created and we will create another dent here. So when we have it, we will go to the left side firstly. We will continue creating the line following the direction of the head. And then we will go slightly to the side with a very, very soft curve like that. And going to the bottom and starting to create the pear shape of the hair. So we will go right here to this line that we have. So the line that is our chin and our line that we have for the start of the body. And we will need to start creating the hair right here. So we will go underneath this line that is our magenta line or something like that. And we will start to create a round shape like that. Now, when you have this round shape, we will go and we will need to connect it with our shape onto the top. So starting to create a very soft curve like that, trying to create a very, again, flowy shape. So it's not parting, so it's not like one part, another part, and we have some kind of the no connection between these parts. We are creating everything in one part. So continue creating this shape, try to make it very, very soft and very, very smooth. And when we have it right here, let's grab our eraser and we will go and work onto this bottom part so it's not that messy, creating that one line or a couple of lines that will make more sense right here. When we have it, we will go to the opposite side and we will do the same thing here. But as we are creating some kind of a tilt into the head, we will need to think about the hair right here too. So if we have the tilt, we will have like two pigtails and they will be like weighting differently right here onto the bottom. So we will need to position this part that we have right here onto the left slightly higher onto this side. So this time we will go above this line that we have as our horizontal line right here. But basically doing the same thing right here, going slightly higher with the shape. Continuing to create the shape, and here let's go slightly bigger with the shape. And when we have this shape, we will go over the top and we will continue creating the overall, I want to say shape, overall shape of the hair. So let's go right here over the top, and this time we will create slightly bigger, you know the word, shape. So going like that with our curve, and we will again connect it with the overall line that we have right here onto the bottom with a very flowy element like that. So again, trying to remain something similar to what we have onto the opposite side. If you see that it's a little bit imbalanced, you are welcome to go and figure out what is making this thing imbalanced. So you can go a little bit like to the sides and add more volume right here. Work with your brush, work with your eraser, and erase the parts that you don't need and create the very nicely looking hair like that. Now, when we have the basic shape, let's go and firstly, let's go and finish up with the top part. So on the top, as we are creating a very cute spring girl, we will go and create some kind of a leafy part, some kind of a sprout element. So let's go to this dent that we've created right here. And we will go towards the line that we have right here, but not quite to the line. And we will create 2 lines going like that. And very conveniently, we have this little dent right here onto the bottom. So we will have it like a bottom part of this like thing that we are creating. So when we have these 2 lines, let's go to the sides and let's create the actual shapes for our leaves. So creating the rounded elements right here. If you want to experiment and maybe create something different, you are welcome to go and do that. As always, go into the opposite side and trying to create something similar to the opposite side here too. So again, going with a rounder shape or with a similar shape to what you had on the opposite side. Connecting everything nicely right here onto the middle part and going towards the middle parts of the leaves and creating the veins elements right here. So creating the lines going like that. Again, trying to make it not very overthinkingly creating the leaves, and then if we need to fix anything later on, we will go and fix it. We also can go and maybe create a different thing right here onto the top, so we will have some kind of the voluminous part right here. So going from this dent and going not like with one line, but with some kind of a shape like that. So we will go, and if we need to erase some parts, we will go and erase them with our eraser, maybe with a smaller size of our eraser, going to both sides and creating something like that. So when we have the result like that, if you need to maybe go and create something different right here, maybe work onto the overall shape, go and do that. And when we have the result like that, let's go to the bottom and we will create the pigtails here. So firstly, let's go toward the bottom part right here, toward one of the sides. We will find the center and we will create the rounded rectangular shape like that. You can go bigger, you can go smaller, it's up to you. Now, when we have it, we will go and create a guiding line that will define our shape of the pigtail, and we will go with the shape like that. So let's go with a very flowy element. So create the line like that. You can go with a bigger shape again, with a smaller shape. So create it. And then when you have it, let's go and turn it into some kind of a flame shape. So it will be the end of our world. Pigtail. Going right here and starting to create the thing like that. So going with a bulkier shape on the top and creating the S shape like that. Going toward the opposite side and starting to create something similar here. So going maybe toward this line, if you think that you can elaborate on that, go like that, go create the shape. And as for the bottom part, I will go with the eraser and erase this messy part right here because it doesn't look good and it doesn't make any sense. So going right here and starting to create a couple more strands. So for example, creating something flowy like that and creating the line going in that way. So again, for now, figuring out, mapping out what we need to create right here, and then going to the opposite side and starting to do something similar here. So again, starting by going to the middle part, creating the hair band right here, and when we have it, we will go again with the flowy shape right here, so the guiding line and creating the shape of the flame. So let's go with the rounder shape on the top, creating something like that, going to the bottom and creating our actual shape of the pigtail. So connect it nicely, create a rounder shape, maybe create the messy lines right here to figure out what you like and what you don't like. So it's up to you. When you have the shape that you like, probably we can go right here and maybe create more like a fatter shape or something like that. So when we have it, let's go and work a little bit more onto the hair. So firstly, we will go right here to the ear that we have, and we will go and create the line going up in that way. Now, when we have it, we will go slightly higher, so somewhere to the middle of this line that we have on the top, and we will go and create a bit of a volume right here by creating another line that will go in that way. Now, when we have it, we will go towards this part right here, and we will make it a little bit more interesting by creating a free-spirited strand right here. So going like that slightly to the side and continuing going continuing to go with the very smooth line, going slightly to the side and starting to create a little strand right here. So something similar to the overall shape of the fringe that we have on the top. So again, starting to create something like that. If you think that you can go and maybe erase this part right here, you are welcome to go and do that. So create something like that, very nice right here. And then let's work onto this part. So now it doesn't look very nice. We can go and add some weight right here, so it will look like the parts, the hair parts are going to some of the small part right here in the shape of the hair bands, and we will have a nicely looking element right here. So firstly, let's go to the middle and we will go and create the couple of lines like that. So create a bulkier shape right here, going slightly to the bottom. So going like that, maybe a little bit flatter shape. So let's go and erase the parts that we don't need. So firstly, we'll see more clearly what we are doing, and secondly, it will look nicer. And then we will go to the sides right here and starting to create a flatter shapes onto the bottom part and creating nice connections between our first shape that we have in the middle and our shape that we are working on right now. So create the shapes like that. And if you want, we also could go to the middle parts right here and maybe create a couple more of the lines right here. So we will have more like a hair shape right here. So going like that, and we can go, for example, more toward the middle and create some kind of a similar shape to what we have right here, like the big one, and creating smaller shapes right here onto this side. Now, when we are done with it, let's go to the opposite side and we will do something similar here too. So firstly, going through the whole shape that we have right here, trying to make it very, very smooth, going toward this side and creating the free strand right here. Let's go like that, and let's again create the corner right here, some kind of a corner, and we will erase the part that we don't need right here on the bottom. So again, going along the line with our eraser, trying to make it very smooth, very soft, very nice, very cute. When we have it, we will go and work onto this bottom part. So again, going to the middle firstly, creating this heavier part right here into the middle part. Again, erasing the parts that we don't need to see clearly what we are doing, and then going to the sides and starting to create different shapes right here too. So going with some kind of the definition between the shapes. So work with your brush, work with your eraser, sculpt your shape right here, go slightly down in the middle, and go toward this part right here onto the side and erase the parts that we don't need. Now let's go and maybe elongate this line so we will have some, again, definition between the parts, and maybe going right here too. So creating some kind of these things and going right here to the middle and maybe creating a couple of more kind of strands right here too. Now, when we have the result like that, let's go and add one more detail to the hair, and we will add it right here onto the top of the ear. So we will go and create some kind of a braid right here. Let's go and do it in that way. We will go to the shape of the ear. We will create two ellipses like that. You can go and maybe create different shapes right here, smaller shapes, bigger shapes, maybe different kind of the braid. It's up to you. When we have these two shapes, we will create two more on the top. So try to make them similar size-wise to the elements onto the bottom. So create these two shapes, and let's go and add a little bit more of interest right here in the shape of the leaves. So some kind of the, I don't know, like hairband here too, or some kind of the clip. So let's go over the top. We have this line right here. Let's go and create another line going to the opposite side, and we will turn it into the shape of the leaf like that. And as for this part right here in the middle, let's go to the sides and let's create the shapes of the leaves here. Let's go a little bit to the shapes of our braids. We will overlap slightly. We will grab our eraser and erase the overlapping parts because we don't need them. And again, going toward the middle parts and creating these parting elements right here onto this side. Now, let's take a look at everything that we have and decide whether we want to adjust some parts or not. So for example, we can go and maybe make these parts slightly rounder and create these parts in a slightly different way. And we also will need to go right here and elongate the shape of the head and erase all the parts that we don't need, so later on we are not confused of what we are creating. So now when we have the result like that, let's get back to our brush and let's finally work onto the body. So firstly, let's go to create the neck. For the neck, we will go slightly to the side from this line that we have in the center, and we will create two lines like that. You can go with different size for this element, with like more thick element, or on the contrary. When we have it, we will go to the bottom and we will create half of the circle like that to finish up with this element. And every finish is the new beginning, so we will go underneath the shape that we've created and we will create the collar right here. So for the collar, we will go to the middle part right here of this element that we've created, and we will go to the sides and we will start to create rounder shapes right here. So go with a couple of lines like that, go to the opposite side here too, and create the shape right here, going behind the shape of the head. So go like that, create a couple of messy lines, figure out later what you are doing right here. When we have the result like that, let's take a look at it from the distance. Maybe we can make it slightly different. So when you are overall done, let's go and start working onto the shape of the sleeves. So for the sleeves, what we need to do, we will firstly go to this area where we have the collar. And from this area, we will go and start to create a slopey shape like that. Now, we don't need this part right here of the hair because it's kind of behind. So let's erase it. And then we will go along this line and we will continue creating the shape of the sleeve. So when we have the result like that, let's go to this corner and we will turn it into a very rounded element like that. And when we have it, we will do the same onto the opposite side here too. So firstly, going right here, starting to create our slopey shape for the shoulder, and then going along this line that we have as our guiding line, and again, going to the bottom and starting to create the rounder shape right here, trying to make it on the same level that we have on the opposite side when we have it on the opposite side too. So if you need to go and erase some parts to clean up your little happy mess right here, go and erase everything that you don't need. And when we have the result like that, I'll probably make this a little bit rounder. And when we have the result like that, let's go and find the center of this area that is supposed to be this like part for the body. We will go right here, find the center, and we will create a straight line like that. Now, when we have the result like that, let's go and create two shapes for our future hands. So we will go towards these lines that we've created and we will go with the very simple shapes of the circles or ellipses like that, going to both sides and creating these shapes. Now, when we have them, we will go underneath them and we will start to create the sleeves part. So let's go like that, create the shape, create the continuation of the shape, the closing parts for the shapes. When we have them, let's go and finish them up by connecting them with these outside parts. So going like that, starting to create the shapes, rounder shapes like that, going to the opposite side and doing the same things here too. So starting by creating this bottom part of the sleeve, going like that, creating the rounder parts right here, rounder connections with the shapes, and then going to the bottom and continuing to create the sleeve like that. As for these bottom parts, we also could go and maybe think a little bit about the surface that she is like putting her elbows onto. So we can go with slightly flatter shape right here onto the bottom. And we can do it on both sides here too. So going like that, maybe flattening up this overall shape and erasing the parts that we don't need. Now, when we have the result like that, let's get back to our brush and let's connect the sleeves with each other by creating a very soft curve on the bottom like that. Now, when we have the result like that, are you ready to make a hand? I think we are quite ready. So let's go to one of the sides and we will go over the top part firstly. We will flatten the shape right here by creating a curve like that. So starting to erase parts unmercifully. Anyways, start to erase the parts, and when you have the shape like that on the top, what we need to think about is the direction where we will have the fingers. So she is holding her hand like that and she's kind of like holding her strap right here. So we will need to go with the direction like that. So let's go and firstly go and make sure that we know the direction that we need to add right here. So let's go and create 3 lines like that. And when we have 3 lines, we are ready to turn them into the actual fingers. So let's start from the top, and we will go with the rounder shape, or like the flatter rounder shape like that, going like that and starting to erase the parts that we don't need. So when you have the first finger, I accidentally erased it. Let's go and continue creating our fingers going down. So we are creating the same thing right here, trying to create the same size for every finger except the very last one that we don't have yet. So going like that and starting to create these sausage shapes right here, trying to make them similar size-wise to one another, erasing the parts that we don't need. And then when we reach the bottom right here, we will go and do the following. We will go and create a small finger like that, so something similar to what we had before, but then we will continue creating the shape going down with some kind of a hook shape. Now let's take a look at everything from the distance and figure out what we need to fix right here. So let's go and erase this part right here because it's not even. And when we have the result like that, let's go and continue creating the shape that we have for the bottom part right here. So we will have this little part. We will go and create a rounder shape, and then we will continue by going to the bottom part of our hand, and actually we will create something hand looking. If you feel that maybe the top part is a little bit too rounded, you are welcome to go and flatten it up slightly. When you have the shape that you like, let's go and actually we will work onto this part slightly. We will create some kind of a stitching right here, and then we will cheat slightly. So when we have the result like that, when we are satisfied with everything hand-wise right here, let's go and do the following. We will go to our S-ribbon icon, freehand method. We will go to this area right here. We will loop it around like that. We will use 3 fingers. We will swipe them down from top to the bottom. We will use the option copy firstly, and then one more time, 3 fingers down, using the option paste. Now, when we have this bounding box, we are using this flip horizontal option from our panel, and we are moving the shape to the opposite side. So very nicely right here. If you want to rotate it, go to the green node, rotate it slightly so it will match the overall look right here. Find the placement. When you are done, let's go to our layers. Let's go to the previous layer, not the inserted image, the previous layer where we have our overall sketch. We will grab our eraser and we will completely go and erase this part as if it didn't exist, like never. So when we have the result like that, let's get back to our layers, go into our inserted image layer, tapping on it, using the option merge down, and now go into this bottom part and continue to create the sleeve right here so it all looks natural. Now with our eraser, we will hide our scenes, we will create the nice look right here. And when we have the result like that, let's go right here over the top and we will create some kind of a fold. So we have this fold into the sleeve, and we will do the same onto the opposite side here too, going with the curve like that. And when we have the result like that, let's go and finish up with our overalls. So going right here and starting to create the straps. So creating 2 lines like that on both sides and making them somewhere where we have the hands. So when we have these 2 straps, let's continue by going right here and creating our line. And also to finish up with our short, let's go right here to the shoulder and create the line like that. And as for this area that is kind of blank right now, let's go and create a little shape of the, what's the words? Pocket. So let's go with a big shape like that. So going rounder with the shape, or if you want to create a different shape right here, you are welcome to go and do that. If you want to add some beautifications, for example, some stitching or maybe some flowers or anything like that, you are welcome to go and do that. So now when we have the result like that, let's go and take a look at our girl without the lines of the guiding lines. We'll get back to our layers. We will hide these layers by tapping onto the check marks, and we will take a look at our girl. And if you feel that something is off and if you want to fix something, let's go and do that. So firstly, when this layer is selected, we will go to the magic wand tool over the top left. We'll go under Liquify and we'll be using the option push and the size slider. So when we are right here with our push brush, we can go to some of the areas and we can sculpt them a little bit to achieve a better result. So let's go and spend some time here, and if you have some elements that you would like to change, maybe make them bigger, make them smaller, maybe reposition something, let's go and do that. And when you are done with the adjustments, when they look pretty fine, so you know what you did and you know that you mapped out and later on you can fix it with your clean lines, let's go and do the following. We will tap onto our magic wand tool twice to get away from this mode, and we will go, and if you want, you can go and maybe clean up your sketch, maybe adjust some elements that are looking kind of wobbly right now because you liquefied them, or if it's okay with you, let's go and position our girl straight at the center. So let's go to our arrow key on the top left. We'll use uniform method. We will go under snapping and turn on snapping into the settings, and then we will hold our Apple Pencil and we can go and look for these two orange lines, one vertical and one horizontal. So that way your girl will be right at the center, but if for you it looks a little bit off, you can go along this line that is on the horizontal axis and move it slightly toward the right. So basically, it will look straight at the center, but it's kind of not. So when we have the position that we like, let's tap onto our arrow key to go away from this mode. And we will go to our layers and we will go to this N icon onto our layer with our sketch, and we will adjust it slightly so it won't be that bright. When we are done with this task, we are ready to move on to our lines part. Let's start working onto our clean lines from some tiny preparations. So firstly, we will go and switch the brush. So go into the brush library, go into the inking folder this time, and select in Studio Pen Brush. As we want all of our lines to be very, very smooth, let's tap onto the brush and let's go inside the brush studio. On the left, go under stabilization and playing with amounts of streamline and amount of stabilization. You can set the settings the same way as you see them right now onto your screen if it's not comfortable for you. So firstly, go to the drawing pad, try it out here and tweak these options until you find them comfortable for use. So when you are done, let's hit done and let's continue by going to our layers and create one more layer above our layer with the sketch. When you did it, let's go to our color palettes and switch the color to lines, and also set the size of the brush to something around 7%. And now we are all good to go to start creating our lines. Now let's go to some of the areas. For example, let's go for the cheek right here firstly, and we will start to recreate the lines right here. Either the same way as we have them onto our layer with the sketch, or you can play around with them and maybe create something different right here. So play around with the lines. If you are not creating the lines with one solid line, you are welcome to go and pay attention to the connections between the lines that you are creating this shape with. So everything should look pretty smooth and pretty sleek, and you will need to have the eye right here for these parts that you are working on with. So going like that and starting to recreate our shapes. And as we are working with the pressure brush, you can see we can push at our Apple Pencil and we will have a pretty solid line, but if we reduce the pressure, we will have the very thin line like that. So again, pay attention to these two and try to put these thick elements only on the ends of the line if you want to use them, of course. Now, when we've recreated this first cheek, let's go to the opposite side and create the second half of the face. And you can use all the options that we used before. You can hold your line at the end. You can go to the editing mode to work with the notes right here to adjust the look of the line. When you are done, accept the changes and let's go and recreate the shape for our ear. So again, working with a couple of lines right here, holding our line, go into our editing mode if we need to adjust anything right here, and going and connecting our shapes nicely and making sure that the connections look actually nice. So if we have some elements that we need to work on, we will go with our brush, with our eraser, and adjust them to our liking. Now, when we have this outer part, let's go inside and recreate this H shape. Here you can work with the pressure a little bit touch it, play with it. When you have it, let's go to the opposite side and recreate this ear right here. I'll probably go with slightly bigger shape so it will match better with the opposite side. We can again go to our editing mode, adjust it from here, find what looks good shape-wise, and when we are done with it, tap on the screen and let's go and deal with the connections right here. So if you have some overlapping parts, go and erase them. On the contrary, if you have some lines that are not going quite to other lines and making nice connections, go with your brush and create these connections. Now let's get back to the brush and let's recreate this inner part right here. And when we are done, let's go to the neck and we will go with 2 lines like that and create the actual shape for the neck. Working onto the connections right here and making them very, very smooth. So avoiding to create a very strong corners, very cornery corners, going with our eraser and making everything very, very smooth. Now let's go toward this part and recreate this top part of our collar and continuing by creating the actual parts for the collar. So again, holding our lines, going to these lines that we have onto our sketch, recreating everything nicely and using all the options that we used before. So create nicely looking lines, make sure that everything is connected and looking good. So if you need to go and work with your brush manually, use the manual labor here, go and do what you need to do. When you are done with the collar, let's go and start recreating the shapes that we have for our sleeves. So with one line, going like that, starting to create our lines, paying attention to the connections and remembering that this part onto the bottom should be a little bit flatter than the overall shape that we have on the top. Let's finish up this part by creating a rounder shape. So if you need to rotate the canvas, you are welcome to go and do that. Go with the even weight for the lines. And as we are done with this bottom part, let's go and work on this top part. So we will do the same thing as before. We will go and recreate this part one time, and then we'll make a copy and put it onto the opposite parts here too. So let's go and recreate the shape that we have for our hand. So going like that, starting to create our lines either the same way as we have them onto our sketch or experimenting a little bit, going like that and creating our shapes, paying attention to the connections. Now, when we are done with this part, going to the top and starting to recreate the hand right here, I won't suggest you to go and hold your lines at the end right here because we are not creating the oval shapes right here or the circular shapes right here. Probably it will be easier to go very, very slowly and create the shapes as they are onto your sketch and do it like in that way. So when we have this shape done, let's go and recreate the last finger right here, working onto the weight of the lines and making everything nice and smooth. Now let's go and recreate this part with the stitching. So going along this curve and creating something going like that. Now, when we have the shape like that, let's go to our S ribbon icon. We will go to the freehand method and very, very accurately we will go and make this selection happen. So when you have the selection, using 3 fingers, swiping them down, using the option copy firstly, swiping down 3 fingers one more time, using the option paste. Now, one more thing before moving this shape. Every time we are moving our shapes while we are selecting them or just with our arrow key, we are worsening the quality of the lines. So to make it less blurry, we will need to go to this option that is the second from the right, where I have the option bicubic. If you have something different, tap onto this option. This is our interpolation and use the option bicubic. This way your lines won't be that blurry when you are going to be moving them. So when you set it in that way, let's go and flip horizontally our shape of the hand, and then we will move it to the opposite side and position it where we need to position it. So when you found the placement, straight away, let's go to our layers. Let's tap onto our inserted image layer and use the option merge down. Now let's continue by going and recreating the lines that we have right here. But before doing that, make sure that the line is looking nice so you don't have any accidental shapes that are going from the opposite side where you were like making a copy. So when you are sure to go, continue going to the bottom and starting to create the lines right here. So again, let's go with the rounder shape. Let's go with a couple of lines because it will be easier for us, going like that and making nice connections between these lines that we are creating right here. If we need to go and manually work onto some of the connections, smooth them up, go nicely and create solid look for your lines. If you see that you don't want to go and recreate some lines, but you can go and maybe adjust something here, so you think so, we can try to go to the Liquify tool and use this option here, but it will be the same as we have it with our selection and transform tool. So every time you are using it, it will be kind of worse in the quality. So if you must do it, go and do it, but try not to overdo it so your lines won't look very weird and blurry. So when you are done with Liquify tool, if you were using it, let's go back to our canvas and let's go back to our brush and recreate the shape that we have on the bottom. So again, with one line, creating our curve, making sure that the connection is nice and continuing to recreate all the elements that we have left onto our sketch. So let's go and deal with our overalls right here, creating our straight lines, making sure that the connections are nice, go into the straps, creating them too. Always take a look at your illustration from the distance to see whether you are doing everything right and whether everything looks the way you want it to look. So when you have these straps, let's go and recreate this little part right here. You can play a bit with the thickness of the line right here. And when you are done with it, let's go to our little additional element right here onto the overalls and let's recreate it too. So going with this pocket, creating our lines right here, going to the opposite side, trying to create something similar here too. Again, making nice connections, go into our editing mode if we need to adjust something, connecting again everything nicely right here onto the bottom and trying to avoid creating these little bit jagged connections if we have them in the first place. And again, go into the corners and trying to avoid creating very strong corners, very angular corners. So if you can go and make them softer, go and do that. And when you have these corners done, let's go and finish up our little pocket with some stitching here. So now when the bottom part is done, let's go and work on our facial features. So firstly, going with one line like that to create the shape for the mouth. If we need to go and adjust it, go into our editing mode, adjusting the curvature or the size or anything that we want to adjust right here. When you are done, tap on the screen and let's go and recreate the shapes for our eyes. So if you want, you can go and make the size of the brush bigger and try to do it with one line, but I don't trust myself, so I will go along this shape right here with the thinner lines and I will create the outlines of the shape and then drag and drop the color inside when it's ready. So let's go and try to recreate what we have onto our sketch. And then when it is done, we will go and drag and drop the color. Again, trying to make everything nice and smooth and solid. We don't need to have any gaps into our lines. When it's done, dragging and dropping the color, taking a look at everything from the distance, grabbing our eraser and starting to sculpt our shape if we need to do that. So going along the lines and starting to make them look nicer. So if you want, you can go slightly with a different shape, maybe adjust this end part right here, the connection part, go with a rounder shape, go with the smoother shape too, and create a nice shape like that. Now, when you have it on one side, let's go and do the same onto the opposite side. So again, going with our brush, recreating the outer parts right here, and then dragging and dropping the color inside. So let's go over the top too, create a nice connection right here. We don't need to have any gaps into our line to be able to drag and drop the color. And when we are able to drag and drop the color, let's go and do that. Now, working with our brush, working with our eraser onto the softness of the lines, onto the smoothness of the lines, and creating something going like that. You can experiment and create something different from what you have onto your sketch. Maybe go higher with the shape or create different shapes for these wings. It's up to you. So try to achieve a nice look right here. And when you are done, let's probably go right here too and soften this up right here inside the shape. when we have it, let's not go and recreate the nose and the cheeks, but we will go and recreate the shapes for our little eyebrows. So going like that and recreating them with one curve. If you want to maybe try to create this part of the eyebrows a little bit thicker, you are welcome to experiment with the shape. When you are done, let's go and start working onto our hair. So trying to recreate the same things as we have them onto our sketch, and going along these lines, and maybe if you want to, you can go and elaborate onto the shapes and create them in a more like very slick way, very swifty way. So go and create something that will look nice. We also will need to pay attention to the connections. They shouldn't look too thick. So if you see that the connections are too thick, go with your brush, go with your eraser and erase the parts that you don't need. Now, working with our holding of our Apple Pencil, go into the editing mode, thinking a little bit about the weight. So we will need to have more weight onto the bottom. And again, going along all of these elements and starting to recreate them either the same way as we have them onto our sketch or creating something different, for example. So let's go toward this side onto the right. Let's continue creating the shapes. If you see that you can go and maybe manually create a nicer shapes for these connections between the parts, you are welcome to go and do that with your brush, with your eraser, with maybe creating them in a slightly softer way. It's up to you. When you are done, let's go toward this part and let's recreate this line here too, making it a little bit rounder. So working with our editing tool here. When we are done with it, let's go to the opposite side and let's recreate this part here too. Again, paying attention to the connections. So if something looks pretty fat right here, going and creating the line in a way that it's supposed to be here. So something very, very smooth and nicely connected. Now, when we have the result like that, let's continue by going to this part and we will create another line here to finish up with our overall look of the top part of the hair. So let's go and create something going like that. We will connect it with the ear, and then let's continue by going and recreating these outer parts of the hair. So let's firstly go toward this part. We will create a line going like that. So hold it at the end, and then straight away we can go and start recreating this part, connect it with this first line that we've created for the outside part of the hair. We also can go to this little tip and make it more tippy. So creating something like that, going with a little bit of a pointy element right here. Now, either going to the top and starting to recreate this shape, probably we will need to have a couple of lines right here. So holding our lines at the end, go into our editing mode if we need to, maybe making it slightly rounder on the top, and then connecting it with the shape that we have right here onto our sketch. So again, trying to make nice connections right here. If you have some kind of a bulkier lines right here, go with your eraser and create the lines in the way that will be even everywhere. So now when we are done with this part, let's go to the bottom and let's start recreating these elements here too. So again, if you need a couple of attempts, go and attempt a couple of times right here. So make nice connections, create the lines that will look nice and smooth. Let's go and recreate this part right here. Again, paying attention to the corner. And then let's go and start creating the lines right here from the middle part, because we will have more weight right here. Again, when we have it, go into the side, starting to create the lines this way, go into the other part right here and trying to recreate this part here too. When we have it, going toward the elongation right here that we have onto our sketch and recreating this elongation here too. Again, working onto the overall shape to create nice and smooth lines. Let's go and get rid of all the lines that we don't need. So if you have some overlapping parts, go and get rid of them. And also we'll need to go right here and recreate some lines right here as we have them onto the sketch, or maybe create something different right here, maybe try out something else. Go with slightly smaller weight for your lines, so adding less pressure right here and starting to create some little peculiar lines like that. Again, if you have some strong corners, go and get rid of them. And when you are done, let's go and start recreating this part right here. And also we can go and maybe create some additional element right here. So for example, let's go and create some kind of the leaf right here. So for example, let's go right here and let's create a little leaf right here. Now, when we have it, let's go and start recreating these pigtails. So go in the same way as we have them onto our sketch, or creating them in a slightly different way. Finishing up with our shapes, if you see that you will need to go with the eraser and erase some parts to make them more sleek, you are welcome to go and do that. When you are done with this part, let's go to the opposite side, and again we will start probably from the bottom. So let's go toward the middle part right here, start to recreate this part, go like that, create these continuations of the hair. So work with your brush, work with your eraser to create a nice look for this part, and continue by going to the sides and recreating these details here too. Work onto the weight of the line so everything looks smooth, and continue by going and finishing up with the bottom part by creating these additional elements. Now let's go right here to the middle part to finish up with our shape. So creating a couple of lines like that, and maybe go into the opposite side here too. So you can experiment a little bit with the shapes and create something going in that way. Now let's go toward the bottom. Let's create this part right here for the hairband, and let's go with the shape for our little leaf right here. So it will be some kind of a detail right here, maybe going slightly with the smaller shape like that. And when we have it, going and starting to recreate the bottom part of the hair. So let's go and start by creating these curvy lines right here. When we have it, go into the bottom and finishing up creating this shape. Again, paying attention to the connections, and go into this part and creating this rounded shape right here. Again, you can hold your lines and the ends to create something more rounded. When you are done, work onto the connections and create something going like that. So for example, I will go and create the line going a little bit thicker onto this part to create a nicer look, and with the eraser I will continue by creating the even weight for all the elements that are here. Now when we have the result like that, let's go and finish up creating our hair right here onto this side. So again, creating a couple of lines right here, hold your line and the end, go to the next little gap right here and create the continuation of this line. Work onto the connections, try not to have the jagged line, and create this additional little shape that we have right here onto the bottom. So very nicely, very evenly going and connecting everything. If we need to work with our eraser to work onto the connections right here, we are going and doing it. Now let's finish up with this top part. So we will go and create the shape for our little leaf element. So going with 2 straight lines down like that, holding the lines to make them straight. So connecting everything nicely, making nice connection right here with the shape of the leaf and the shape of the hair. Going like that and continuing by going over the sides right here and creating the actual shapes for the leaves. So let's go hold our lines and the ends and create the shapes like that. Connect them nicely again. If you want, you can go and erase these parts, but make sure that the connections between the leaf and the stem part are very, very smooth. And then go to the opposite side straight away. You can erase this part right here and create the lines going like that. So again, making nice connections, making very, very smooth lines, holding our line and the end if we want to go into our editing mode, if we want to taking a look at everything from the distance, if we want to. When we are done working onto the connections to make everything nice, and continuing to finish up with our lines right here by creating a little curve like that, working onto the connections one more time with our brush, with our eraser. For example, here we can go a little bit higher and create a rounder shape, and then with smaller size of the brush, so using less pressure, we are creating these veins elements. So going like that and starting to create our shapes. Let's go to the opposite side and create something similar here. So probably with slightly less weight right here, we'll go and create something like that. Go into the sides, creating our lines. And the very last thing will be to go and recreate this shape for our little braid. So let's go and do that. So firstly, we will go and start recreating the shapes that we have right here. We are going slightly to the sides right here, going outside the shape and starting to recreate these shapes. Go with slightly bigger shapes, with slightly smaller shapes. It's up to you. You can go with different shapes right here. Try to create a couple of elements as you have them onto your layer with the sketch, or experiment again and create something like that. Again, here we'll need to have more weight on the bottom, so everything will look nice and smooth. If you have some overlapping parts, grab your eraser and erase the parts that you don't need. So very easily going right here and erasing these overlapping parts. Now, when we have these parts, let's go and recreate the leaves. So firstly, creating this part right here, going toward the top and recreating the shapes for the leaf. Again, if we have some overlapping parts, we are erasing them with a brush or with the eraser probably. It will be easier to erase the things with the eraser. Going toward these leaves that we have onto the bottom, again, creating them, overlapping our shapes with our braids if you want to, and creating the leaves going like that. Erase all the overlapping parts and use your eraser for it. Now let's go toward the middle part and create this half of the shapes right here. If you see that something is not looking good, you are welcome to go and fix it with your brush, with your eraser manually, or maybe try to use the Liquify tool if it's minor. Take a look at everything from the distance, and let's go to our layers and hide our layer with the sketch to take a look at everything as it is with our lines. So if you need to go through some lines and maybe make them differently, you are welcome to go and do that. And when you are done with it, one more time, taking a look at everything from the distance, making sure that everything outside is closed. When you are sure, let's move on to our next part where we are going to be adding the basic colors. So for the basic colors, let's do the following. We will firstly go to our layers. We will tap onto our layer with our lines and we'll use the option reference. You can know what it is in a minute. Firstly, let's go back to our layer where we have our sketch. We will hold this layer and drag it above our layer with our lines, and then we will go to our layer underneath our layer with the lines and create one more layer here. Now let's get back to our color palettes, and we will use the skin color and we will drag it to the area where we have the skin. So that is how our reference works. We are using the new layer and using the lines that we have on the separate layer. So now let's continue recoloring all the elements that are supposed to be skin colored. So dragging them one by one or dragging it to one place and using continue filling option on the top. So let's recolor everything that we need, and when we did it, let's get back to our layers. Let's create one more layer above our layer with the skin, create one more layer. We already created one more layer. Let's go to our color palettes and use the hair color right here. Let's drag it to all the areas that are supposed to be hair colored. So go into all of these little braid parts and everything. Try not to recolor the lines. When we have the result like that, let's tap onto this check mark on the top and let's go to our layers one more time to create a new layer here. Now let's pick the green color, so this one, and we will go and recolor all of these green elements. So again, continue filling and drag and drop the color to all of these additional little details here. Right now, we cannot go to this top part where we have the leaf. We will need to go and manually create the elements right here. So let's firstly tap onto our little check mark on the top, and we will do the following. We will go to our layers. We will go to our previous layer where we have recolored our hair. We'll tap on it and we will use the option select. Now going back to our layers, go into our layer where we have green elements, adjusting the size of the brush and manually going toward this part right here where we are supposed to have the green color for the leaves, and adding the color here, making sure that we've recolored everything, that we don't have orangey parts right here. Go into the stem and creating the element here too. If you already did it, grab the eraser and adjust the parts so they will look nice. Now, when we are done, let's tap onto our airdropping icon to get away from this mode. And let's continue by going to our layers, creating one more layer here, go into our color palettes, and let's select this short to color. To make sure that we are recoloring everything, let's do one more thing. Going back to our layers, hiding the layer with our background color, and onto this new layer that we've created, we will go to the color and to these bottom parts of the sleeves, and we will recolor them. So when we've recolored these elements, let's get back to our layers, let's get back our background color layer, and let's create one more layer on top. Now switching the color to short and recoloring these parts right here. When you are done with it, tap onto the check mark on the top, go to the layers, create one more layer here, changing the color to overalls and adding the color right here to all of the elements that are supposed to be our overalls. Now, when we did it, what we need to do next for our base colors is to go towards these elements that we had onto our layer with the sketch and recreate them, so the facial features. So let's get back to our layers. Let's firstly go to our layer where we have our lines. We'll tap on it and we'll turn off our reference. Now going and unhiding our layer with the sketch and going to our layer where we have our skin, creating one more layer from here, and we tap onto this layer and use the option clipping mask. Now, going back to our color palettes, selecting the color with the title cheeks and going to recreate the shapes for the cheeks. So with one line, probably with a smaller size of the brush, going right here and recreating our shape. Holding our line, go into our editing mode if we want to adjust the shape, maybe make it slightly rounder or find a different placement for it. When you found what you are looking for, tap onto the screen, drag and drop the color inside and move to the opposite side and recreate the shape right here. So again, hold your line at the end, go and create the connection between the shapes right here because you have only half of the elements, and drag and drop the color inside the shape. And with the same color, let's go and recreate the shape for the nose. Now, when we did it, let's get back to our layers and let's hide our layer with our sketch. Now we are done with our basic colors, so let's move on to our next part where we will add some beautifications in the shapes of shadows, highlights, and some details. Let's begin by working onto some areas that we have onto our face. So we will start from some tiny shadows. We are using right now the color with the title cheeks. So let's go and add some kind of the shadowy parts. So firstly, we'll go toward the inside parts of the ears right here, create the shapes like that, drag and drop the color inside when you are ready. Do the same onto the opposite side here too. So create the shape, drag and drop the color, and with the same color, we'll go right here toward the shape that we have for the neck, and we will put it completely in the shadow. So you can adjust the size of the brush so it will be easier for you to add the color here. Get back to the smaller size of the brush and let's go right here to the bottom part of our hands and add little shadows here too. Now, when we are done with this task, let's get back to our layers and let's go. Well, actually, we don't need to go to our layers. I wanted to create a new layer, but we can do it on the same layer here. So let's go to our color palettes and change the color to shadow right here. And we will go firstly toward the cheeks, and with the smaller size of the brush, we can go and add these lines right here to add some blushing. And when we are done with it, let's go toward the neck right here, where we have this part. We will go and elongate this line that we have for like the bottom part of the chin, and we will create something like that. So very soft shadow right here. Now when we have it, we are done with our face. So let's go to our layers, go to our layer where we have our hair. Let's create one more layer here, tap on it, create clipping mask, and we will be working onto the shadows here. So for the shadows, it will be easier for us to go to the N icon right here and change the blending mode to multiply. And for now, let's set the opacity to something around 40%. Now let's get back to our color palettes and change the color to hair shadows, and we will start adding these shadows. So firstly, let's go toward this area, and we actually need to think about the lighting, and to be consistent with our shadows and highlights, we will need to put the sun or some kind of a light source on one side. So for example, let's pretend that our light source will be right here on the top left. So everything shadow wise will be more toward the right bottom. So let's go and start adding our shadows in accordance with it. Let's start from here, for example, and we can go with the very rounded shapes for our shadows, or you can go with more like not super rounded shapes. Let's go and start going mostly toward the bottom parts, and we will create our shadows here. We also will need to think about what is some kind of overlap in what. So we will need to think about where we will need to have the actual shadows. So for example, this part on the top is kind of a little bit higher. So everything that is underneath it will be in a shadow. So we will need to show it right here onto our hair too. You can create the shapes right here. You can drag and drop the color inside when you are ready. And for example, for this part, let's go and create a big shadow like that. Again, try to create it in a smooth way. If you are creating some connections with your shapes, go and make them smooth too. And let's go right here, completely put this part in a shadow and drag and drop the color inside when we are ready. Continue working onto the bottom parts right here. Let's go with our brush like that. Let's create the very nice shadow right here. And we will continue by going to this part here too and create the shadow here too. Basically, we are repeating the shapes that we have for our main objects right here. Now for this pigtail, let's go like that, and we will create a shadow going in that way. Loop it around, drag and drop the color inside. Let's go from the bottom right here and create a little shadow here too. And then we can go and, for example, continue creating this little parting element right here, but on the top. So with our shadows, we will create some details too. Again, pay attention to the connections, pay attention to the thickness of these elements, create something very, very smooth and very, very nice. When you are done, let's go over the top and let's start adding the shadows to these elements here too. Let's go through all of them very nicely, adding the shadows on the bottom, very delicate shadows right here, so it's not gonna be very overwhelming. Creating something like that and finishing up by going to this part and adding the shadow here too. Now we will go toward this line and we will add the shadow here, and then we will start to go to the sides from our leaves and underneath them too, and we will start to create the shadows here too. We also can add a little shadow right here. So again, basically repeating these shapes, going toward the sides and creating the similar shapes with our shadows. Again, thinking about what overlaps what, so we will need to go underneath the leaves because they are some kind of on the top of our braids, and we will need to show it here. Let's go toward this part right here onto the bottom, adding the shadow, going like that, starting to create our shadows here too. And as for these two elements, let's completely put them in a shadow. You can go with a bigger size of the brush, so everything will be kind of very, very delicate right here. Let's go toward these parts. We will create the continuation of our shadow. So repeating the shapes, and then again, repeating the shape of the ear, going like that, create a nice connection between the previous shapes, going with a smaller size of the brush, for example, here, and going toward this part and starting to create a line like that. Going around this shape, and then we will put it completely in a shadow. Again, if you see that you can go and maybe work onto the lines, go and do that. Try to make everything very, very smooth, very, very nice. Continue adding the shadow, go into these shapes onto the sides. So repeat the shapes and add a bit of the shadows right here. Now, when we have it, we will go toward the bottom part right here to this pigtail, and we will create a shadow going like that. So let's put this part completely in the shadow. We will create some kind of the elaboration on the top, and we will drag and drop the color inside. If you want to work onto this part, maybe make it a little bit thinner, you are welcome to go and do that. So create something like that, work with your brush, work with your eraser, create a nice shape. If you want to create a little shadow right here, again, you are welcome to go and do that. So create something that will look very, very nice and very believable. Now, when we have the shadows right here, let's decide whether we like the amount of opacity. So for example, we can go to our list, tap onto the M icon right here and adjust the opacity so it's not that bright. For example, 34% looks good. Now, when we have the result like that, let's continue by going to our next layer. So it is our greenish layer, creating one more layer on top, tapping, clipping mask, multiply blending mode, amount of opacity of around 40%. Changing the color to green shadow and going to the green elements and starting to add the shadows here. So again, using the same method that we used before, we are going to the places where the shadow is supposed to be, so mostly toward the bottom right parts. Going toward these leaves on the top, creating our big shadows, making nice connections as always. Going to the leaves that we have onto the right, and again going mostly toward the bottom right parts and adding our shadows here. Use the bigger size of the brush, the smaller size of the brush, it's up to you. Probably we will go toward these parts and we will completely put them in the shadow because our shapes of the hair are overlapping the shape of this hair band. Now, when we have the result like that, let's continue by going to our layers, go into our whitish layer here, creating one more layer on top, tapping, clipping mask, multiply blending mode, amount of opacity of something around 30%. Changing the color to short shadow. Now, when we have it, let's go towards this part and we will completely put it in a shadow. Then we will go to the back right here, edit a bit of a shadow right here too, and then going like that and creating another part of the shadow here. As for the sleeves, we will go to the bottom parts and put little shadows here too. If you feel that the amount of opacity is not enough or too much, you are welcome to go and change it. You know how to do that. Go to the layers, M icon, and adjust the opacity right here. Let's continue by going to our sleeves, creating one more layer, tapping, clipping mask, multiply blending mode, opacity 30-something%. Going again to our color palette, changing the color, or if it's already here, short shadow, and going and starting to create the shadows here. So again, thinking about what is overlapping what. So for example, the top part of the collar will be obviously on top, so creating something like that, continuing to go and create our elements, going right here, putting it completely in a shadow because we have a head on top, going toward the bottom parts and creating our shadows here too, going toward the opposite side, starting from the bottom, creating our shadows here. Now going right here to this part where we have the fold and creating a bit of the shadow here too. Now, when we have the result like that, let's get back to our layers. The last layer with our overalls, creating one more layer here, tapping, clipping mask, multiply blending mode, opacity of around 20% or so, changing the color to overall shadows. Going to some areas, and again, thinking about the areas where we are supposed to have the shadows. For example, right here, and going right here too, starting to add our shadows. Going underneath the arms right here, starting to add the shadows here too. Going to the opposite side here. So thinking what overlaps what. Probably the pocket will be overlapping the shape of the overalls right here. So we can go and add a bit of a shadow here too, very slightly. So when we have the result like that, we are done with our shadows. So now it's time to add some highlights. So for the highlights, let's go to our layers, create one more layer on top, only one layer, and we will change the blending mode to overlay. As for the opacity, for now, let's go with something around 70%, and we will change the color to highlights. So now with the bigger size of the brush, let's firstly go over the top of our hair, and we will be going along the shapes, and we will be creating the highlights here. So very softly going like that and starting to create our highlights. You can go with bigger shapes, with smaller shapes, it's up to you. Go like that and start to add the details here. Let's go through all of these elements. Probably maybe with a smaller shape of the brush, it will be easier to go and create these details, and going toward this part and going to the opposite side and starting to create the elements here too. So you can go and maybe add smaller details here to create a nicer result. Also, we can go toward the shapes right here with the smaller size of the brush, so to the opposite side from our shadows, and we will create a big highlight here or the top part of the hair. We also will go to this part right here, creating our little highlight here, going towards this part onto the pigtail, adding the highlight here too. If you feel that it's not enough, you can go and get a bit more of the opacity right here. And also we will go and change the color to short too, and we will go toward the leaves right here, and we will add the highlights to the opposite sides from our shadows here too. So you can go and maybe add some highlights like that, some beautifications, little dots, some peculiar little shining right here. Go to these little parts right here, add the highlights here too. So it's up to you. When you have the result like that, let's go and work onto some lines to soften them up. So what we need to do is to go above our layer with the lines, creating one more layer here, tapping on it and selecting our clipping mask. When we did it, let's go to our color palettes, and firstly, let's go and select this dark red lines color. We'll go with the bigger size of the brush, and firstly, we will recolor the shapes that we have for our eyebrows, so very accurately go in there. And then we will go with the smaller size of the brush, and we will go inside these shapes right here, and we will be starting to recolor the ends that are free. So everything that is inside and everything that is free right here, we will go and recolor. So let's go through all of these elements and let's start recoloring these parts. Again, trying to repeat the shapes as they are, and try not to go to the shapes that are not supposed to be recolored. As always, making nice connections between the shapes that you are recoloring and that are keeping the same colors as they were before. So go into the opposite sides here too and starting to recolor these parts that are free right here, starting to go inside and recoloring these little parts. So going like that and softening up some of the lines that are supposed to be orangey right here. Now let's move on to the braid, and we will recolor the lines here too to soften it up here. So very accurately going maybe with even smaller size of the brush where we have the leaves right here, starting to create the lines right here with this orangey color, and then we are recoloring everything that is supposed to be recolored. And try not to recolor the elements that are not supposed to be recolored. So recoloring only the elements that are in need to be recolored. Now, when the braid is done and when everything that is supposed to be recolored with this color is recolored, let's go and switch the color to hair, and we will go inside the shapes of the ears and we will recolor these parts here. So go into both of the sides and recoloring these inner parts of the ears. When we are done with it, we will go and switch the color to short shadow. We will recolor this little line right here. And if you want to recolor some other lines, for example, the folds, you can try it out here too. Let's see what else we will need to recolor. Probably we will go and switch the color to this green shadow, and we will go inside the leaves parts and we will recolor this veins part right here. Do it on both sides. If you want to go to the leaves that you have right here, you can go and recolor them too. And when we have the result like that, let's get back to our list. Let's create one more layer right here, and we will go and select this dark red lines color. We will go towards the top right here, and we will create a line right here. So the same way as we had it onto our layer with this sketch. So going like that and creating a little part of the parts for our little sprout right here. Create it in a nice way. So if you need a couple of attempts, go and create it in a couple of attempts. If you feel that you can go and maybe soften up this shape by reducing the opacity, you are welcome to go and do that right here. When you have the result like that, we will go again to our list, create one more layer right here, and we will go to this folder that you downloaded with the stem brushes, and we will add a bit of the interest to the picture by adding additional elements outside our girl. So let's go and find our simple stem brushes. We will go with heart number 2. We will change the color to hair. Firstly, we will go and adjust the size of the brush, and we will go right here and put a little heart. You can drag and drop the color inside. Then we will change the color to green. We will change the size of the brush. We will go and start to add a couple of more hearts right here. You can rotate the canvas to match the diagonal axis that you use right here for the heart. So you can go and use it here too by rotating the canvas. Go toward this bottom part here, add a little heart right here too, add the color inside. Let's go and switch the brush to sparkle 1 or sparkle 2, and then we will change the color to cheeks. Go in toward these parts and we will fill the areas right here with one big sparkle and one slightly smaller sparkle, adding the color inside the same way as before. And then we will go and change the brush to calligraphy folder monoline, and we will go again to our color palettes, and we will be using our hair color and the green color to add some kind of the dots somewhere to these blank areas. So probably with slightly smaller size of the brush, let's go right here, let's go right here, let's go, for example, right here, add a couple of these dots, let's switch the color to green, and let's add a couple more dots here too. For example, right here and maybe right here. And if you want to go with slightly softer look, we can go to our layers, tap on the N icon and adjust the opacity of this layer. And you know, like the super very last thing that we can add right here will be to go to our layer with the lines. Select the same color with the lines and go back to our brush from our inking folder. So it was our studio pen brush. We will use the same size that we use, 7%, and we will go right here to these areas where we have these free strands, and we will go with our brush and we will create some kind of the even freer little strands right here. So just with the line like that, going to these areas and starting to create these two little elements right here. And when we have the result like that, if you of course want to go to some other areas and create a bit more of these elements, you are welcome to go and do that. But if you are satisfied with everything here, we are done with our illustration. I hope you are proud of your result. Share it on socials and tag me so I can see your beautiful creations. And if you enjoyed this video, you can find more similar kawaii tutorials on my Skillshare or on Patreon at the link in the description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.